And with the pattern pieces being done, I went ahead and took some old pair of pants that I had sewn a long time ago. I wore them so much that I wore them out. So I sacrificed it for some fabric so that I can make the mock-up. Now, when I was sewing the mock-up for this first pattern draft, I remember I didn't add any seam allowance because I wanted to see if it would fit me close to the pattern, but I did forget that that worked later on, and it did cause the bodice to be a bit loose. But we'll get to that later. When I first tried the mock-up against my own body, I realized I didn't like the torso. It was a little short for my liking, so I decided to just go ahead and make it longer in the next mock-up. Just manually edited that. Yep, and here you just see me finishing the mock-up before I made any changes that I wanted to.
The seamstress finally returned to her project. A day and a week remained before the fair. But firstly, a little lunch.
Now in this next series of steps, I took my final pattern draft that I had edited based off of my first mock-up that I made and went ahead and decided to make my lining for the corseted bodice out of it. There were still a few edits that I was unsure of making, but I decided to go ahead and take the risk, and it all worked out in the end. I would say I would probably run it through at least another mock-up if I wasn't fully sure, but in this case, I was very pressed for time, so I went ahead and, again, just took the risk. I went with the flow, I just did it on the fly. Now, you will notice that when I start cutting out these pattern pieces that I traced out from my drafted pattern, I added seam allowance. Forgetting that for my mock-up I had added basically none, no seam allowance whatsoever. I will say when I was doing the mock-up I sewed right close to the line and the seam allowance was very, very tiny, but even then I didn't need as much seam allowance as I was cutting out, as you can see here. So that will cause an issue later in which my bodice is much too large for my liking, but I mean, it's still like that to this day, but I'll have to go in and fix it later. I decided to take a quick break from my Renaissance fair dress and just work a little bit on the 18th century men's shirt that I'm hand sewing right now. I did want to take this moment to explain to you guys how my pattern pieces work for the bodice. So I filmed this very, very late at night, right before I was about to go to sleep. So I will insert the following clip of me attempting to explain in a concise fashion how my pattern pieces work. Keep in mind, it is already pretty dark outside. I'm sorry about the shadows. I know the lighting isn't ideal. why am I confused about this? Okay. I have these pattern pieces labeled. I alter them as needed already. And I have made it so that I could tell what parts go where by having little, there we go. By having little brackets with little symbols that, and also marking where the top and bottom are, so that I can make sure that I don't get that mixed up. So, with that being said, let me just arrange this so you guys can see how the pattern lays out. Okay, just that piece. I'm gonna get all in chocolate. It goes here. And all that. Okay, so I went ahead and basted, for the most part, I basted it together. Here we go. Boom. I was trying two different things. I was trying to see if it would align. If I started from the edge, it did not. So I will have to undo this hip. No, I forgot to include the two hip pieces in the pattern. That's where they go. Sorry about that. There's the front panel and the back panel. So that was part of the pattern as well. I moved on from my lining fabric to the actual outer facing bodice fabric. I decided to go ahead and zigzag stitch the little edges on the inside. For most of the pieces, I had basted and or pinned them together just so that the actual lines where the bodices need to be sewn were aligned and were precise, because with my human error, obviously the seam allowances that I cut out were not always even. I managed. Somehow, someway, by God's grace, I managed to not finish my dress, but get it to a point where I could wear it out to the Ren Faire. Upon seeing the entrance, I hadn't even walked into the fair. I was so giddy. I was so excited. I'm still smiling all over just thinking about it, and I absolutely made up my mind that this is somewhere I most definitely want to go at least once a year. And I may or may not be going to another one at the time of editing this. such a time. What is it that they say it is? Whimsy? The air was full of it. That it was as full of whimsy as Georgia is of pollen during springtime. And I much prefer the first one.
Headphones, stupid self-employed DJ.
So please enjoy these following clips I took from my first Ren Faire.
You want to see me let go?
Yes.
Here you go, small. One more.
I nearly forgot. Here's the dress that I made. I forgot to take a full body shot of it, but here's the breakdown. So that's where it's going to need a little more structure, and that's where I sewed myself in. But that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Or shall I say, farewell till next time, dear traveler. Gosh.